This is one of the first mirrorless cameras that came out. And it also happens to be Panasonic's very first mirrorless camera. This is the Panasonic GF1. This camera came out in 2009. How many years ago is that? That is so far back. I think I just started high school back then. The legacy that this camera has left is so incredible. I mean, nowadays Panasonic has, first of all, discontinued this line of camera, the GF series, but what it laid the foundation for all of the rest of Panasonic's amazing Micro Four Thirds camera today. So I'm talking about this camera because I've actually been using it for the past like 2 to 3 years, and I have been loving this little guy here. This guy is a little gem. As usual, we're gonna talk about the build quality, the specs, the performance, and most importantly, the image quality. So first, let's talk about the design. The Panasonic GF1. This camera is completely made out of metal. This camera is solid. At first glance, this camera looks like it's made out of plastic. It doesn't look very solid. And that's what I thought too when I first looked at photos of this camera. But then when I held it, it felt cold to the touch. And you know what that means? That means this is made out of metal. The whole thing is like a brick. Okay, like you can hurt someone with this. So in terms of build quality, it is top notch. It is up there. Surprisingly, even though it is made out of metal, it's actually quite lightweight. This is their first try in making a mirrorless camera. And honestly, they went for a more safe design, and it kind of really works with this. This is as simple as it gets. The material, if you're wondering, is magnesium alloy. So it's built with very strong metal in quite a light body. The main reason why I bought this camera in the first place is, first of all, it was very, very affordable, like pocket change. And secondly, it's because it is small. Like this is like point and shoot size camera. And let me tell you, for street photography, the size is incredible, especially paired with this beautiful 14mm f2.5, which is equivalent to about 28mm in full frame. This is my Ricoh GR, essentially, the 28mm version. It doesn't necessarily like slip into your pants pocket, but it slips right into your jacket pocket or even like a small bag. And it is perfect for that type of portability. So this camera rocks a 12.1 megapixel CMOS sensor, and they actually call it a live MOS sensor. I don't really know much about that, but I mean, it's not really a CCD, so it's a CMOS sensor. And this 12 megapixel is actually more than enough for what I need, for what I use this camera for. Here is that sensor right there, as you can see. Micro Four Thirds sensors is actually not that small in terms of a sensor size. Yes, it's smaller than APS-C, but it's a lot bigger than a point and shoot or even your phone. And you can get blurry background, and you get like quite decent low light clean images with a Micro Four Thirds sensor. The ISO ranges from ISO 100 all the way to ISO 32,000 and expandable to 6400. Personally, I don't go anywhere above ISO 800 with this, just because it is an older camera and there will be noise. And yes, you can get clean images if you do some like long exposure, but at higher ISOs, the technology is not there in this one, or I guess it's not where we are today. It is a contrast-based autofocus, which is pretty primitive nowadays. And also it has face detection. Yeah, this camera has face detection, which is pretty cool. And you can even record some faces on this, but whoever uses that. In terms of performance, the Panasonic GF1 for its time was really fast for the type of camera it was. Remember, this was Panasonic's very first mirrorless compact camera. And this used to boast the fastest autofocus of its genre back in the days. And even today, honestly, like, it's still quite good. It's still like as fast as, well, it used to be back in the days. It's definitely not going to compete with the cameras of today. As a camera in general, it is not slow at all. The burst shooting there's more to be desired. I mean, listen to this. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Yeah. How many did you count there? That is actually 3 frames per second. So you're not really gonna do much sports photography with this. And personally, like, I never really shoot burst. I just shoot in single. So yeah, that's the burst. Since this is a micro four thirds camera with a micro four thirds mount, you can put all of the micro four thirds lenses on this camera, even the ones that are more modern. So you have plenty at your disposal. When this camera came out, it came out with the 20mm f1.7 pancake lens. It's about like slightly bigger than this, but that one was a pretty good lens that came out with. I personally never owned it, but that's gonna be one of the lenses that I'm gonna look out for. And what I'm rocking here currently is the 14mm f2.5, which is equivalent to 28mm. And this lens pairs perfectly with this camera. Another big advantage is that you can actually put vintage lenses on this. You can adapt a bunch of vintage lenses on micro four thirds, which is a cool bonus. All right. The moment you have been waiting for, the most important thing about a camera. The image quality that comes out of this Panasonic GF1 is incredible. And I know I say that all the time, but really the amount of like details that I can pull out from this camera is actually like surprisingly really good. Yes, it does have an old sensor. It's, I mean, practically the first model for the sensors that later on Panasonic improved over time. But for what it is, the colors are actually really, really good. The images are sharp. And one bonus thing that I learned when I bought this camera and when I started using it is that there's actually film presets, or at least they call it film presets, and they are like, you can mod them. So let me show you here real quick. So this is how it looks like. And then I'm just gonna go into the menu, and there you go. There's film mode right there. And let's select that, and there you go. So you have my film 1, film 2, and you can actually shoot 3 film, or I guess presets, at the same time. So you take one picture and it outputs 3 different images, or I guess different color images. And all of these are actually customizable, as you can see right there. And yeah, I have my own presets there. You can customize the contrast, the sharpness, the saturation, and the noise reduction. So yeah, that's a cool feature right there. The raw files on this are so good. The amount of details that I was able to pull out from the highlights and the shadows were surprising. An advantage of having a low megapixel camera is that your files are not going to be huge. So you can put a fairly decently big memory card. I currently have a 32 gig, which is more than enough for 12 megapixels. And I just shoot raw and it does really well. I mean, I've never filled it up to the max. So yeah, small files and beautiful images. So here are some photos that I captured over the years with this camera. As you've noticed, I took this camera out during a protest. The reason being is because this camera was a low risk camera for me and I didn't pay much for it, so I wasn't really afraid to break it. But not only that, this camera, again, is made out of magnesium alloy body, so it is tough and it can take a beating. I wasn't expecting much when I took this camera out, but man, look at these photos. Like, oh my goodness. When I came back home, my jaw dropped considering how well this camera performed. Even at night, I used the flash, this little pop-up flash here, and these shots came out so good. Like, look at these. They came out so good, and I am so happy as to how they turned out. So next thing is that this camera actually can record video. And it's not good video, it's 720p. As I mentioned in my previous reviews, 720p is not really that good, but if that's the look you're trying to go for, I mean, with this camera, you get 720p and interchangeable lenses. So yeah, I guess there's an advantage there. I personally wouldn't use it, but I mean, let's just test it right now. There we go. Now we're recording in the 720p of the Panasonic GF1. I don't even know if I'm focused. Let's go right there. And yeah, this is how it looks. So you be the judge. One cool thing though about the video for this camera is that you actually have manual control over the settings for the video. So that's a cool thing to have. In terms of user experience, it is actually quite intuitive. I mean, all of the buttons are all on one side, so it makes it accessible with your hands. And yeah, you got a little dial here that also acts as a button. So you can move that around and then you can press it, right? It has one function button and it's not really that useful in my opinion because you can't really set as much settings on it, and everything that I need personally on the buttons are exactly where I need them to be. So as you've noticed, I have added some modifications or some add-ons into my camera. As you can see here, I have some grip tape and I put like a handle here, and I also added like a thumb grip because without those, this camera is not that comfortable to hold. It's literally shaped like a slab of brick. So there's not much grip anywhere. I always like to modify my cameras to me so that I can have fun using it and also so that it feels comfortable. But yeah, having it there feels nice for me. The menu system is actually quite intuitive. It's not complicated at all. I'll show you right now. This is the menu and everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. And you even have a bunch of custom menus. This camera is super customizable though. Like you can dig deep into the menu and make this camera exactly how you want it. So yeah, this is considered, I personally consider this an enthusiast camera, like compact camera. This is a camera for nerds. One cool thing that I recently acquired for this camera, I got my hands on this. This is Panasonic's viewfinder made for this camera. Yes, so you notice there's no viewfinder in this, but there's contacts right there. Ooh. And with this viewfinder, it just clips in just like, come on, just like that. And there you go. Now you have a viewfinder. And the viewfinder is of its age. It's not that great, but I mean, getting to do this is always a plus for photographers, especially when this one can actually tilt up so you can do some like waist finder type of shooting. So that's pretty cool. And this is how it looks like. Hopefully you guys can see this. Let's turn it on right there. It's not that great, but it is what it is. And like, look at this. It's really cute. And it doesn't even make the camera look bad. Yeah, I like it. So let me answer this one question. Is the Panasonic GF1 still worth it today? Easy answer. The easiest answer of all is yes. This camera is so good even today, especially for the price. I got this guy off of Facebook Market for like 75 bucks. And this camera is amazing for, especially for beginners. But even for enthusiasts, as a secondary camera, it is so fun to use and it is small, so it makes you want to grab it and go. Another reason is that for street photography, this camera is near perfect. Just because of the size alone and also the build quality, it is amazing. One little gripe that I have with older cameras is the shutter sound, because this shutter is actually quite loud, but it doesn't really bother me. I mean, I'm not trying to hide as much when I do street photography, and the shutter sound it is what it is. I used to shoot with a DSLR for street photography, so it's not that big of a deal, but listen to this. So I'm just gonna put it next to the microphone here and listen to this. It's quite loud, but when you're outside and there's hustle and bustle, people are not going to hear it. So that is the Panasonic GF1, an amazing, cute little strong camera that came out in 2009 and is still kicking very well to this day. There's a few limitations, but apart from those, if you can get over those, this camera is an amazing option to grab today. If you're looking for a robust, small, and honestly super customizable camera, the Panasonic GF1 is the one.